Chapter 9. Seamen, continued. Provisions, sickness, medicine chest, hospital money, relief in foreign ports, protection. Provisions. For the benefit of seamen, it has been enacted that every vessel bound on a voyage across the Atlantic shall have on board, well secured under deck, at least 60 gallons of water, 100 pounds of wholesome ship bread, and 100 pounds of salted flesh meat, over and above the stores of master or passengers, and the livestock. If the crew of any vessel not so provided shall be put upon short allowance of water, flesh, or bread, such seaman shall recover from the master double wages for every day he was so allowanced. Act 1790, Chapter 56, Section 9. The same rule applies to other voyages than those across the Atlantic, and the amount of provisions stowed below must be in proportion to the length of the voyage, compared with one across the Atlantic. Act 1790, Chapter 56, Section 9. It also applies to seamen shipped in foreign ports, as well as to those shipped in the United States. 1 Pet Ad. 223. It has been thought that if the articles enumerated cannot be procured, the master may substitute other wholesome provisions, but it is doubtful whether even this will free him from the penalty. At least it will not unless he can show that it was impossible to procure them at the last port of departure. 1 Pet Ad. 229-223, B. 84. Ab. 135, note, where 454. Besides this special enactment, a seaman may always recover damages of a master who unnecessarily and wantonly deprives him of sufficient food and nourishment. 2 Pet Ad. 409. If, however, the short allowance is caused by inevitable accident, without any fault of the master or owner, or is a matter of fair discretion in a case of common danger, the master is not liable. Another law of the United States provides that if any master or other officer shall willfully and without justifiable cause withhold suitable food and nourishment from a seaman, he shall be fined not exceeding $1,000, and imprisoned not exceeding 5 years. Act 1835, Chapter 313, Section 3. The master may at any time, at his discretion, put the crew upon an allowance of water and catables, but if it is a short allowance, he must be able to give a justifying reason. Provisions in England. See note to Chapter 1, under title Provisions. Sickness, medicine chest. Every vessel of 150 tons or upwards, navigated by 10 or more persons in all, and bound on a voyage beyond the United States, and every vessel of 75 tons or upwards, navigated by 6 or more persons in the whole, and bound from the United States to any port in the West Indies, is required to have a chest of medicines, put up by an apothecary of known reputation, and accompanied by directions for administering the same. The chest must also be examined at least once a year, and supplied with fresh medicines. Act 1790, Chapter 56, Section 8. 1805, Chapter 88, Section 1. In case of dispute, the owner must prove the sufficiency of the medicine chest. It does not lie with the seaman to prove its insufficiency. 2 Mason, 445. If a vessel has a suitable medicine chest on board, it would seem that the ship is not to be charged with the medicines and medical advice which a seaman may need, but the ship is still liable for the expenses of his nursing, care, diet, and lodging. 1 Mason, 541, 1 Sumner, 151. And accordingly, if a seaman is put on shore at an hospital or elsewhere for his cure, the ship is chargeable with so much of the expense as is incurred for nursing, care, diet, and lodging, and unless the owner can specify the items of the charge, and show how much was for medical advice and how much for other expenses, he must pay the whole. 1 Pet Ad. 256, note. The seaman is to be cured at the expense of the ship, of a sickness or injury sustained in the ship's service. 1 Sumner, 195. But if he contracts a disease by his own fault or vices, the ship is not chargeable. Gilpin, 434. 1 Pet Ad. 142, 152. A sick seaman is entitled to proper nursing, lodging, and diet. If these cannot be had, or are not furnished on board the vessel, he is entitled to be taken on shore to an hospital, or to some place where these can be obtained. It is often attempted to be shown that the seaman was put on shore at his own request. This is no defense. He is entitled to be put on shore if his disease requires it, and it is seldom that proper care can be taken of a seaman on board ship. 1 Pet Ad 256, note. If a seaman requires further medicines and medical advice than the chest and directions can give, and is not sent ashore, it would seem that the ship ought to bear the expense. But this point has never been decided. Gilpin, 435, 1 Pet Ad, 142, 152, 255. If the medicine chest can furnish all he needs, the ship is exempted. 2 Mason, 541. Sickness and medicine chest in England. Every ship sailing from the United Kingdom to any place out of the same shall have, and keep constantly on board the same, a sufficient supply of medicines suitable to accidents and diseases arising on sea voyages. And in case any default shall be made in providing or keeping supplied such medicine as aforesaid, or in case any of the seamen shall receive any hurt or injury in the service of the ship, the expense of providing the necessary surgical and medical advice, and attendance and medicines, which the seaman shall stand in need of until he shall have been cured, or shall have been brought back to some port of the United Kingdom, shall be borne and defrayed by the owner and master of the ship, or one of them, without any deduction whatever on that account from the seaman's wages. 5 and 6 William IV, Chapter 19, Section 18. Hospital money. Every seaman must pay 20 cents a month out of his wages for hospital money. This goes to the establishment and support of hospitals for sick and disabled seamen. Act 1798, Chapter 94, Section 1. Hospital money in England. All masters of merchant ships and owners working their own ships are to pay 2 shillings per month, and all seamen or other persons employed in any merchant ship 1 shilling per month for hospital money in England. 4 and 5 William IV, Sections 5 and 6. The master is to deduct this monthly duty from the wages of the seaman, and to pay it, and the amount due from himself, to the receiver appointed under the Act. C. 7. Relief in foreign ports. If a vessel is sold in a foreign port and her crew discharged, or if a seaman is discharged with his own consent, he can receive 2 months' extra wages of the council, who must obtain it of the master. Act 1803, Chapter 62, Section 3. This applies only to the voluntary sale of the vessel, and not when the sale is rendered necessary by shipwreck. If, however, after the disaster the vessel might have been repaired at a reasonable expense and in a reasonable time, but the owner chooses to sell, the 2 months' pay is due. To escape the payment, the owner must show that he was obliged to sell. Where 485, Gilpin 198. It is also the duty of the councils to provide subsistence and a passage to the United States for any American seamen found destitute within their districts. The seamen must, if able, do duty on board the vessel in which they are sent home, according to their several abilities. Act 1803, Chapter 62, Section 4. The crew of every vessel shall have the fullest liberty to lay their complaints before the council or commercial agent in any foreign port, and shall in no respect be restrained or hindered therein by the master or any officer, unless sufficient and valid objection exist against their landing. In which case, if any seaman desire to see the council, the master must inform the council of it forthwith, stating in writing the reason why the seaman is not permitted to land, and what the council is desired, and that the council is desired to come on board, whereupon the council must proceed on board and inquire into the causes of complaint. Act 1840, Chapter 23, Section 1. Relief in foreign ports in England. See note to Chapter 4 under the title If by shipwreck, capture, or any cause whatever, any seafaring men or boys, subjects of Great Britain, are cast away or left, or be in distress in foreign parts, the governors, minister, and councils appointed by Her Majesty, or where none such are resident, 2 or more British merchants there residing, are required, under a penalty of £100 for each man or boy, to provide them subsistence and a passage home. 11 George IV and 1 William IV, Chapter 20, Section 82. And when any person forced on shore, or left behind, shall be relieved under the provisions of the 11 George IV and William IV, Chapter 20, then in addition to the wages due from, and the penalties imposed on, the master, Her Majesty shall be entitled to sue such master or owner for all the charges and expenses incurred in the subsistence, necessary clothing, and conveyance home of such person. 5 and 6 William IV, Chapter 19, Section 40. Protection. Every American seaman, upon applying to the collector of the port from which he departs and producing proof of his citizenship, is entitled to a letter of protection. The collector may charge for this 25 cents.